Hello, welcome to another edition of Curtis Jones Writing. I'm reading each book one chapter at a time until I've read all 14 books that I've written, and I'm on book number 5, which is Love Endures All Things Across the Creek, and I'm on chapter 8. I was having a little problems with my knees today, so I decided to present this one from the comfort of my recliner. The title of chapter 8 is Other Things. So let's get started. Because I was not working outside anymore, I needed to come up with a way to add to our bottom line. We talked about a few ways to do that, but most had a rather large setup cost. Finally, we settled on raising dogs for profit. We had owned a mid size kennel some years before this, so we had some experience in the field. We were confident we would find this profitable to do. We weren't sure what kind of money we could earn. We still thought it was the most reasonable thing to do. We started looking at the newspaper for ads for AKC registered dogs. Rottweilers were the best selling dogs in the paper at that time, not the most expensive, but best selling. The first thing was to establish a good solid kennel that would keep the dogs safe and not let them run loose. We finished it quickly and continued to look for the dogs we liked. When we got the dogs we wanted, we got a mature male from Waldron, Arkansas. The female came from Figure 5, Arkansas. The unincorporated town got its name because the map of the day designated that location as Figure 5 mile because that was how far it was from the town of Van Buren, Arkansas. Both towns were near Fort Smith, Arkansas. The dogs took very nicely to the large kennel, which was larger than what they were kept in. We made friends with these dogs and acclimatized them to our family very quickly. They didn't have to stay in the kennel very long before they were allowed to run free. They were a great deterrent for strangers that might have happened upon our house, so we thought. We also went and got 3 Cocker Spaniels. They were very pretty dogs. They were what was called party color, meaning they were brown and yellow and red and white and black and spots all over them. The Cockers were very friendly to everyone. The Rottweilers were weary of strangers. Even if they looked scary, they would go and hide behind the house when strangers came. Before we had our first litter of pups, while our Cockers were pregnant, someone came up while we were in Fort Smith and stole all of our Cocker Spaniels. That was very difficult to deal with. The Rottweilers were also expecting our first litter from them, too. We licked our wounds and got back to work. In a short while, we had our first litter of puppies, 9 little clones of their mother. They were quite beautiful little critters. The kids just loved them, as did we all. Everything went splendid with this, our first litter, up to a point. We medicated the pups as we had always done with the dogs we raised 15 years earlier. We began to wean the pups. They cried for a few days, but they were eating well by that time. The first thing we noticed was that some began to have diarrhea. Then, within a day, they seemed to be tired and played much less. When we came to the kennel, they were kept in the kennel. By the next morning, they were all sick, and we took them to the vet for an examination. We said, or he said, that they tested positive for parvovirus, and he said it was too late for any treatment. And we lost all the puppies within a day. This was a terrible blow to the idea of extra income. We sold the Rottweilers within a week. Our daughter gave us a Shar puppy. When we were given an adult Shar female with her papers, she was 2 years old and almost ready to breed. The male was a 4 year old and very scary looking that we acquired. His face was wrinkled to the point it looked like he was frowning at you. His back was about 18 inches from the ground, and he weighed about 75 pounds. He was all muscle, and he looked it. His bark vibrated your chest. He was loud, and it was deep. He was very friendly to almost everybody, but he had his favorites. He also had those whom he did not trust. Our son Michael had a new wife, and this dog never liked her. When they came over, she would stay in the car until Stephanie or I would come out to escort her in. Oh, she would get out of the car if she didn't see him. Booger was his name. He got that name to frighten our 3 year old granddaughter into not going outside without us. Booger would hide behind the car when they came over and wait for her to get out. And then he would sneak around the back and make himself known to her. She would run to the house screaming all the way. I think Booger had a sense of humor, if you want to know the truth. He sure made us laugh a lot. Got to love a dog like that, don't you? Few, oh, there we go. The female was a little bit smaller than Booger, and she was just as wrinkled as he was. She was about 14 inches tall, and she was about 60 pounds. These three dogs became our focus for the hope of extra income. The first litter of pups uh, we had was a litter of six, and they were chocolate colored, which was kind of rare. Our local TV channel ran a story about these puppies on the local evening news. They were doing a story on our veterinarian while we were there. Needless to say, we sold all these puppies for $1,000 each. We knew I had found the source of extra income we were looking for. Most Shar puppies have to see a vet as soon as their eyes open, just in case they have entropic eye disease. It's a condition where the eyelid turns inward and irritates the eyeball. The vet and most people call the surgery having the eyes tacked or tacks done. It was about $50 per pup, well worth the effort that just became an expense of the breed. We did well with these dogs. Our female was called Cleo, short for Cleopatra. These two dogs actually became dear friends to the whole family. They were free to roam the property, and we never had anything stolen again. They mostly stayed near the house, although Booger liked to walk to the creek with me when I helped Stephanie in going to and from work. A good side effect was that we never saw any more tracks of the great cats that were in the area. We also raised chickens for eggs and meat. Most of the male chickens we got at the hatchery up in Lincoln, Arkansas. Nothing ever bothered the chickens, but eggs would disappear out of the nests. In some of our off grid books, we were told if snakes were raiding the chicken nest to buy or make eggs of rocks or cement and leave them in the nest so the snakes would eat them and die because they couldn't digest them. We didn't have any more snake troubles either. Having cured all problems so far, we set our minds on our driveway. We had been driving through the 50-acre field up to this point. I spoke to Jim at the store, and he came over to look and suggested we use the old stagecoach road that ran alongside of the creek bank all the way until you passed the north property line where our place ended. Jim said we needed a culvert where the driveway would climb the small hill up to the area where the carport and house sat. Jim had one he had replaced and sold it to me. That was good because I didn't have a way to get one home from town. So all went as planned as Jim worked the stagecoach road from just past the slab all the way to our house, including putting in the culvert. Jim only charged $750, and he spent 2 days on this job. Jim was a good friend to the whole family. While he was there, we had him push up a little dam to create a small pond at the draw behind our house and get rid of the vines that grew there. When Stephanie and I got Jim paid for the tractor work, we bought a small camp trailer from him. Jim had taken it in as payment for a bill someone else had run up. We paid $1,000 for the camper, and he let us park it on his place right behind the store. We did that so if we could not get in over the slab, we could spend the night in it. It was a good idea on paper, but in practice, it would not work. We were never comfortable in it. When spring passed, we moved it to our place near the house. It would come into play at a later date. The creek should not be high until next spring, so we thought. Let me get this out of the way there. It was parked next to the fence where Dan had hidden on his intended murderous spree all those months ago. A few months later, our oldest son was getting divorced from his wife, and he was given custody of his 4-year-old son. That was our first grandchild. So, to save money, he asked if he could pay for the camper and live in it. Stephanie and I talked about it and decided that to have someone else pay for the camper would relieve us of some debt, and we agreed. And Michael and his son Anthony moved into the camper. He moved it across the fence and cleaned up part of that area so as to park on it. Get that out of my way. Uh, he kept it close so he could have access to the power when we were on the grid. Otherwise, he was just like us, and the trailer did have DC lights in it and to run off of 12-volt battery. During this time, our son Brian had been in the Navy and stationed in Charleston, South Carolina. He had married and had a son himself. He and his wife had divorced to call it, or decided to call it quits, and he moved back home also. Now, when, or now we had my three sons living at home. Just a pun. They were Stephanie's three sons as well. I'll speak to Brian being home again in a little while. Children being gone from home changes them, and they behave much differently when they come back. And so you should think about that a lot before you agree to it. This will conclude this chapter. I'm sorry I didn't go to the desk and do it this time, but I wanted to give my knee a chance to kind of get feeling better, so I simply stayed in the chair and did it. Uh, the next chapter I will be doing is chapter 9, called 4 Years Across the Creek, and I did some summation there, and I think you'll enjoy that one too. Uh, where I sit at the desk, I point up over here and say, you could look at my web page, which is curtis-jones-books.squarespace.com. And it has a link that will take you directly to Amazon where you could acquire these books in either ebook or paperback. And some of them come in hardback. And on this side, I generally have a sign that says Curtis Jones author page on Facebook. It also has links that'll take you to Amazon where you can acquire these books. But both these sites give you an overview of every book that I've written. And you might want to look at those if you're thinking about getting a book. I will say God bless you and keep safe. Stay out of harm's way. Until the next time. Bye bye.